In this enlightening talk, Mathieu Recard, a renowned Buddhist monk and author, shares his profound insights on happiness and well-being. Speaking at Google Zeitgeist 2013, Recard explains how inner peace, compassion, and altruism contribute to a flourishing life. He also differentiates between temporary pleasure and genuine happiness, offering a roadmap for cultivating inner strength in the face of life's challenges.
What can we learn from Buddhism and your own experience about happiness? How do we become?
Well, I was thinking about, since the panel was titled about pleasure, about the relation between the two. People speak of magic moments, like walking in the snow under the stars with a wonderful person. And then, but sometimes they say it's magic moment, there's nothing I can do about it. But if you think about why was it magic? At that time, there was a sense of having no inner conflicts, of feeling sort of a bit spacious with the universe, with a loved one, and so this kind of peace. So it's not that magic. You can understand why it happened. So could we consider that as something like a way of being that we could cultivate as a skill? Now, to come back to pleasure, you come back from this walk in the snow under the stars, and you take a wonderful hot shower. It's bliss, pleasure. Now, you stay 24 hours in that hot shower. It's not so interesting. So pleasure is very much dependent upon time, circumstances. It's something that uses itself as we consume it. And if it's on top of that, you add craving or grasping, then somehow it dims the feeling of deep satisfaction. Actually, you can enjoy something pleasurably, and in the brain you build up the wanting circuit, which is different, and at the end you may experience something that you want without feeling pleasure. That's called addiction. So in a way...
So just to understand, so you're trying to separate happiness from pleasure, and you say pleasure is much more temporary?
Well, pleasure is, you look for pleasurable sensations, and so those are very vulnerable, let's say, to outer circumstances. And basically, if you are keeping on trying to renew that all the time, and this is the recipe for happiness, it looks more for a recipe for exhaustion than happiness. So let's take happiness now as a way of being. So a way of being which is not just happiness on its own, but a cluster of human qualities. That is inner peace, inner strength, inner freedom. It is loving kindness, compassion, friendship, resilience, inner courage. And those are things that the more you experience them, rather than pleasure, the more actually they get deeper and stronger, because it builds up something. So in the end, you end up with inner resources to deal with the ups and downs of life, no matter what happened, at the opposite of pleasure. So it builds a platform in life on which you come back after winning the lottery, you come back, or even go below. If it's a drama, you also come back to that platform, but you raise that platform as a skill. So now, it's also something that gives you a sense of confidence that you can go through the ups and downs of life. So therefore, you feel less vulnerable. You feel less threatened. You feel less protective. So you also naturally will open more to others. So that element, I think, especially the notion of loving kindness, altruism, compassion, benevolence, those are key components to genuine happiness. And it's not necessarily pleasant. We were talking yesterday while taking a walk, that can it be compatible with sadness? So if it's pleasure, no way. But you see an injustice, a massacre, it's incredibly sad. But you can keep the sense of courage, of determination to change that, of compassion, of sense of direction in life. And so you will treat that in the best possible way, in a constructive way. You won't fall into despair. So it's compatible with what I call a way of being, which is flourishing and well-being, even though it's very unpleasant. So in that sense, it is different.
Yeah. So I want to find out how you do this, because it sounds interesting. It sounds promising. But so here's my kind of big struggle with pleasure. There's an analysis of people who've been climbing mountains. And when you read these stories about mountain climbing, they seem like stories of pure misery. You would think it's elation. No, it's first of all, it's really dangerous, but it's frostbite and hard to breathe and hard to walk and injuries and so on. And from these descriptions, you say somebody just did that, and they go to the top, they will say this was the biggest mistake of their lives. They'll go down and never do it again. And from then maybe just try to get simple pleasures out of life rather than this horrific experience. Nevertheless, people finish climbing big mountains in the Himalayas and they go back and do the same thing again. And it's the kind of pleasure that looks to me like it's not captured day-to-day thinking. It's a pleasure that comes from achievement, and it's a pleasure that comes from competition. It's a pleasure that comes from overcoming challenges. It's a pleasure that comes from pain and misery in some interesting...
You know the idea of flow.
Yeah.
It is not so much the competition. I think flow is something that you are fully engaged in. You forget yourself. It's just challenging enough that you have to put the best of yourself, and not too much that you panic. So it's not boring and not stressing. So flow can be achieved through mountain climbing or a surgeon or an artist. It could be achieved also through meditation. It's flow without action. So a continuous stream of experience which has a quality, a sense of flourishing, that the time takes another value. When I sit in my hermitage, some people say it must be so boring, sit months alone in the hermitage. Don't you feel lonely? Don't the time seems long?
Actually, you must have access to all Paul's movies when you sit there.
Well, but I find the time so rewarding. Just, before lunch break, 15 minutes, it's like a stream of melted gold. I have these 15 minutes to just go deeper in trying to generate compassion and all that. So it is a kind of inner flow. So I think really it's the quality of the experience that will determine over the long time how you go about that.
So, you've been called the happiest man in the world, I think.
Sorry, I made so many disclaimers about
that. I didn't say you said it. Somebody said it. Clearly, you're very happy. That's
not too bad.
Not too bad. So, we've tried to kind of think about what kind of things we do wrong and how can we do it better. Spending money, being happy, what kind of things our intuitions are generally not correct. And from your experience, what kind of things actually are making people become happier and more satisfied?
Typically, the lottery studies very much. The comments, people say, oh, of course, if I had that, I will be happy. And then you hear people who have everything to be happy. They are beautiful, they are famous, they have a lot of money, and you learn they are very depressed. Oh, if I had died, what's wrong with this guy? If I had that, I will be happy. I think it's too much. Of course, we need to improve the outer conditions, no question, especially there's still 1.5 billion people living in abject poverty. There's conflict. There are mothers who can't feed their children. No question that we should improve outer conditions in this world. This being said, especially when we have what we need, if we keep on placing all our hopes and fear in the outer world, we are in for a big disappointment. Because precisely when we get it, we say, so what? I expected from that something wonderful, and it's just ordinary. So we vastly underestimate the importance of inner conditions. We deal with our mind from morning till evening. That's the ultimate experience of whatever you do, whether you get a Ferrari or something else. It's your mind that's going to translate that in happiness or misery. And that mind can be our best friend or your worst enemy. Depends how it works. So at least if we could pay some attention on how to deal with the mind, how to deal with emotions, how to recognize that aggressivity, hatred, jealousy, arrogance, craving will just destroy your happiness and basically make you act in ways that destroy the happiness of others. And if you find out that loving kindness, compassion, cultivating inner peace, the simplicity of the present moment contribute to flourishing, and then you will be a person that will be happier to be with, and that transformation will lead you to serve better others, then you realize that cultivating as skills those inner conditions matter tremendously.
I buy it, but how do you do it? So what do you, so I want to be less jealous.
How do you learn chess? How do you learn to read and write? How do you learn to juggle or play the tennis? You practice. So we do have this unconditional love feeling for a very dear person for 15 seconds or so, and it comes back and goes. But who sits for 30 minutes cultivating loving kindness? Very few. My friend Paul Ekman said we should have compassion gymnasiums every block. We should So,
No, so how do you give us a specific example? So how do you practice compassion?
So let's say if you want to practice loving kindness, you should start with something easy, someone you really love, so you don't have to try to absolutely have loving kindness for a dictator or something, or someone even worse that is your next colleague at the office. So you start with that, and you have this natural love and feeling of embracing, and just you want anything but that person. You want only that person be happy, be safe, be flourishing in life. And then instead of having few thoughts, you let that fill your mental landscape. If it declines, you revive it. And you don't do that just for few thoughts. You try to extend that for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Or you repeat it several times in the day for a few minutes.
You think about that person and you think about all the wonderful things you want.
Not only that, but you try to grow a genuine loving sense of love. Not just thinking again, but just it's a trigger. And then after that, you think, well, I don't wake up in the morning thinking, may I suffer the whole day and if possible my whole life. So does that person, so does that person, so does that person. So I project myself in your mind, in their mind, and I say they may be deluded in the way they try to find happiness in the wrong place, but basically they don't want to suffer. So if I value my own happiness and that of my child, I start valuing them, I see the interdependence among all sentient beings, and suddenly I can extend that. So then comes something that is very rewarding, is that sense of connectedness, of having this natural benevolence to others, that readiness to be at service when occasion comes. And it certainly makes a much more fulfilled life. Experientially, this, among all positive emotion, loving kindness and compassion, neuroscience will tell you, this is the strongest activation of positive emotions.
So as a last question, so you've Buddhism for a long time, have practiced kind and loving meditation and have argued it's correct. Now the neuroscience is showing changes in the brain as according to it of both experts and novices. Why do you think this is not part of the human intuition of the modern world, that this is something we should be doing? Because how many people here meditate? That's probably a big percentage compared to a regular audience. Why do you think this is not something that people
First of all, we need to
intuit?
demystify. Meditation in Sanskrit means bhavana, means to cultivate or to become familiar with. So we become familiar with many things, but possibly not exactly the right things for genuine flourishing. So in the Eastern tradition, this is part of life, so not as odd as here.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably that we vastly underestimate potential of mind to change as skills. Oh, this is for granted. I'm like that, take it or leave it, but I can't do much about it. So that's a loser sort of perspective. But what neuroscience shows, and that's why that collaboration is so fruitful, is that neuroplasticity can happen at all ages, and it starts within 2 weeks, and it certainly makes a difference. And in the behavior, I mean, we don't have time, but just now we are with Richard Davidson, there's a program for preschoolers, 4 or 5 years old, 8 weeks, very simple training of pro-social behavior, gratitude, and so forth. And you will be amazing of the result. It completely breaks after 8 weeks the in-group, out-group. They give as much, we could ask them to give stickers to their best friend and to the less likely friend in the class after 10 weeks, although in the beginning they give everything to their best friend. So simple interventions, secular, that based on this experience from the contemplative side, that can be an immense contribution.
This has been fantastic and inspiring, and I'm looking forward to more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Visit our site, EnglishSpeechChannel.com, for exclusive access to video transcripts, offline audio, English lessons, and private classes. Don't forget to explore our free and new ebooks. Also, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for the latest updates. Links in the description below. Thanks for your support.